Hi, I'm George with NS345 coming live to you from my kitchen. Today I want to talk to you about the basic skills that a mixing engineer needs in order to begin mixing. Recently, I've been doing a lot of one-on-one coaching with different folks on Skype or Google Hangouts or in person. And what I've noticed is that half of the time, if not more, is spent on learning how to install applications, how to save files, how to find stuff on the computer, how to save stuff on the right place, find these stuff in the root system. Like in a Mac, the way you save files is a little different and the way you find files. Basic stuff like setting the mouse to do certain things, very basic things that take up a lot of the time. Like I'll say, hey, let's do this, and the person may not know how to use a computer. Yesterday, I had a really cool session with Marlon, one of my subscribers, and the nice thing was that Marlon was very computer savvy. So anything that I told him to do, he would do right away and we would move on. So we focused a lot on strategy, his mixing skills, his workflow and stuff like that. So it's very important that if you're gonna it's very important that before you even get into a DAW or get into recording, take a basic computer skills class. That is gonna go a long way. If you notice people on forums, or when people are asking for help, a lot of the times they're asking for things that are not even related to the DAW. They get upset at the DAW manufacturer, they get upset at the plugins, they get upset at their computer, but it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the lack of basic computer skills. So if you're struggling with your DAW, if you're struggling with recording, simple things like saving, using external drives, finding stuff in your computer, installing libraries on external hard drives, but installing your software on your main hard drive, I will highly encourage you to take a basic computer skills class. Okay, moving on. Assuming that you have these basic skills, and that you understand how to import audio into your DAW, how to import audio into your session, that you have general awareness of sample rates, bit depth, gain staging, pre and post fader metering, then you're almost ready to go. Now, I'm not saying be an expert at these topics, but you should have at the very least basic awareness in these elements. If you don't, I want to encourage you again just to pause this video and go and learn about those things really quick, because these things are the pillars or the foundations that help us to get a really good mix. It has nothing to do with actual mixing, it just has to do with awareness. Also, if you don't understand these basic concepts, don't buy any new hardware. It's not gonna make your mixes better. Don't buy any new plugins. That's not gonna make your mixes better. Okay, so let's get to the point today. Today, I wanna talk to you about setting your initial static mix. The problem with the static mix is that songs are dynamic. For example, the verse may be really quiet, but the chorus may be really loud. Therefore, if you set your static mix to a specific level, you're gonna have to go back and change it again. So what you need to do is pick the loudest part of the song, the most dynamic, or what you think is the most important part of the song, and set your static mix using that specific section of the song. Now, once you've identified the section and you've created a static mix around that section, the rest of the mix is gonna have to follow that. This means that potentially you're going to have to do automation. That's another very basic skill. I say basic now to me, but I know when I started it was very difficult because I didn't really understand it. Let me give you a practical example. Let's say I selected a section of the song that I think is the loudest and the most important part of the song. But within the context of the song, I want my snare and my vocal to be the superstars of the song. That means that I want to always hear my snare and I want to always hear my vocal, but I don't want them clashing. So the first thing that I do is I set those two levels up, the lead vocal and the snare. I want the lead vocal and the snare as loud as possible within the constraints of my target mix output level. What does this mean? In my case, you know that my preferred target output level is always minus 18 dBFS RMS. As such, my snare cannot be any louder than that or cannot be going above that. So the RMS of my snare needs to stay around minus 18 dBFS, the same for my lead vocal. Everything else will have to follow around that. Now, because I've set those two levels, the snare and the lead vocal at that level, my output level, my target output level will be much easier to reach within the mix. The next thing I want to do is I want to make sure I bring up the gain of my monitors so I can hear it nice and loud. All right, enough talking. Let's go to the studio and see how it really works within a session. Before I go, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. All right, here's the session I recorded. I have drums, bass, guitars, a bunch of guitars, FX, synthesizers, keys. I have a click, some reference track, and my master track. This is gonna be really loud. All right, so that's what it sounds like right now. Everything's gain staged properly. The track is not cleaned up yet, but that's all right. The first thing I'm gonna do is create the static mix around the lead vocal and the snare. The lead vocals right here is buried amongst all the tracks, so you can barely hear it because everything's loud right now. I'm gonna audition the song right at the chorus. I'm gonna use chorus 3 here. So I'm gonna lower everything else, and then I'm gonna bring up the vocal. Before I do that, let's hear the drums. All right, turn off all of the groups. I'm gonna select all of these, select the all group, and I'm gonna bring all of the faders down. Deselect, close this window. Now I'm just gonna bring up the lead vocal. Now one thing that's important here, you need to set your monitoring level to where you're gonna be mixing at. For example, I'm mixing right about 75 dB, so that's pretty loud for me. So I know where that's at on my volume knob of my interface, which is about 1 o'clock. I'm gonna disengage the all group, otherwise everything is gonna come up. I'm gonna bring my lead vocal up slowly, and I'm probably gonna set it right at 0. Notice that right now my track is going past the 0. 0 VU equals minus 18 dBFS RMS. The next thing, I need to make sure I'm in pulse fader. So right now I'm in pre-fader metering. I'm going to deselect that. Bring that down a little bit. Now, there's one thing that I've been playing around with recently. So I'm gonna try to normalize that track using a Melda plugin called M Loudness Analyzer. All right, and what I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna normalize the levels using this plugin. I'm gonna normalize it to minus 18 dBFS, and I'm gonna use my VU meter here to make sure I'm doing it at the right level. Now this video is not about explaining this, but I can do another video about it later. My target is minus 18, and then I'll set this to 0. No gain. And let's see what the meter is doing. The one thing with this plugin is you have to allow it to hear some audio so that it can do it correctly. I'm gonna fix that just because I'm being pedantic. I'm gonna bring that back to 0, and I'm gonna make the target a little quieter. So I'm just gonna make that 20 here. Hit OK. Okay, that's perfect for me. So that's normalized now. Now with this plugin, I don't like to have the plugin there, so I'm just gonna commit the plugin. I'm gonna right click and hit commit up to this insert, and I'm just gonna say delete the original track. Take that off. Offline. Even the waveform looks a little different. Don't get me started on the normalization deal with the plugins because I don't understand it. I'm still trying to learn this. Libertad me has dado en mi interior. Ya no soy Now I'm gonna go to the snare.
Clavo del temor, libertad me has dado en mi interior. Ya no soy más esclavo del temor. Oh, libertad me has dado en mi interior. Ya no soy más esclavo del temor.
So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna set the level of the snare, and the combined level of the lead vocal with the snare can't trigger the VU meter to go above 0. So I need to be really careful with that. So I'm gonna use the combined levels of the vocal and the snare.
Libertad me has dado en mi interior. Ya no soy más esclavo del temor. Oh, libertad me has dado en mi interior. Ya no soy más esclavo.
So the next thing I want to do is I want to adjust the gain on my interface, what's coming out of the monitors, and I'm going to do that by turning the volume knob on the interface.
Del temor.
Okay, so when I'm done mixing, this is the volume that I'm gonna hear overall, the snare and the lead vocal driving it. Now if I bring up the kick, for example,
Libertad me has dado en mi interior. Ya no soy más esclavo del temor.
now I'm creating the static mix around the lead vocal and the snare.
Oh, libertad me has dado en mi interior. Ya no soy más esclavo del temor. Libertad me has dado en mi interior. Ya no soy más esclavo del temor. Oh, libertad. Libertad me has dado en mi interior. Ya no soy más temor. Oh, libertad.
So now I have a pretty good balance between the lead vocal and the drums. Let's bring in the bass.
Libertad me has dado en mi interior. Ya no soy más esclavo del temor.
That sounds good to my ears.
Libertad me has dado en mi interior.
Okay, I have a bunch of guitars, so I'm just gonna focus on a few of them.
Libertad me has dado en mi interior. Ya no soy más esclavo del temor. Oh, libertad me has dado en mi interior. Ya no soy más esclavo del temor.
So right there, that's a solo, that's a pretty loud part. I have an organ that plays along with that.
Libertad.
I'm just gonna put this on pre-fader metering real quick, just so that I can see audio coming through. as you continue to create your static mix, you see that things start to get buried. The lead vocal and the snare is starting to get a little buried. So this is where you need to start pulling back. So now you've got a pretty good mix here. I'm gonna add a quick VCA track. How do I do that? I need to create a group first. I'm just gonna call it EG's Electric Guitars. Okay, now I'm just gonna create a new VCA stereo. It's gonna throw it right next there, and I'm gonna select the group. And I'm gonna do the one I just created. I'm gonna bring down the guitars. Call it Guitarras. And I'm gonna make this VCA Guitarras. All right, so you get the idea. Remember, lead vocal, snare. Well, I want to be clear, it's just for me for this song. I'm going to use the lead vocal, the snare, and maybe the acoustic guitar. And then the static mix will start to build around those two elements of the mix. Then when you start applying your plugins, you have to be careful because right now your nominal level is minus 18 dBFS RMS. That's at the loudest point at the chorus. So everything else will have to follow around that. Remember, choose your main elements, choose the most important part of your song, which to me was the chorus and the solo, and then start mixing around that. Get your level to be a nominal minus 18 dBFS, as in this plugin, and then start mixing. And then you can use that to prevent the plugins from adding gain to your mix. So when you start going above that, then you could start pulling back a little bit because now you know you're starting to add gain. The other thing too is, by doing this, once you're done mixing or done a preliminary mix, now you have all this headroom. So if you wanted to bring up the drums a little more or the bass, you have all that headroom within your mix. This is so important. I think this is a technique that's helped me so much. I hope it helps you too. Let me know what you think. How do you build your static mix? Is this the first time you see this, or do you have any tricks you can share with us? All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you for watching.